Your Excellencies and esteemed participants, good afternoon. We will start the second session in just a few minutes. As the speakers and moderators prepare, let us give them a few more minutes, and let's meet after 5 minutes. We'll start. Your Excellencies and esteemed participants, good afternoon. We will now start the second session, which will focus on the youth and free trade in light of peace and security and discuss challenges and opportunities. I would like to invite Mr. Keith Andre, Director of Programs at the African Youth Commission, to moderate the session. Mr. Keith, are you ready? Mr. Keith, you may have to press the request to speak button to get permission from our technical moderator to access the floor.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you very much for joining. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies and colleagues, good afternoon once more to the powerful session, the second session today on youth and the Africa Free Trade Area in light of peace and securities. We'll be focusing more on challenges and opportunities, and we hope that we'll have this as interactive as possible. There has been a lot of opportunities and challenges mentioned by previous speakers in the first session and the opening remarks, and this comes at a great time for all of us to engage. As we continue to engage on this session, it will be 1 hour and 45 minutes. We will break it into 2 segments, where the first segment, we will have a panel discussion, and with me, I have 4 great, well-balanced panel who will take 1 hour and just unpack the topic for us. And then we'll go on to the second segment, where we'll take 45 minutes of an open mic kind of discussion. In this session, you'll be encouraged to post your questions. During the first segment, please post your question onto the chat box so that we can bring them onto the attention of the speakers. To ensure that we have order during our Q&A, kindly make your question as brief as possible. And if you also want to make a contribution, note it as such. If it's possible, please also share or direct the question to a specific speaker, if you may. As we continue on this session, I highly encourage you to share the learnings and discussions and deliberations that we're going to have on this session with our friends and colleagues who are out of this session. The hashtag is Pre-Tana Youth Forum, Pre-Tana Youth Forum, and feel free to tag IPSS, the Tana High Level Forum, GIZ, and all the partners who are actually making this possible, including the African Youth Commission. So with me, I'll dive in very quickly and introduce my panels by way of names, just to ensure that they are here. And in this order, they will take on the floor. So our very first speaker colleagues is Ms. Rowena Emmanuel, the youth focal point of GIZ. And then we have Mr. Rotimi Olawale. He's the Executive Director of Youth Foundation for Development, Education and Leadership, commonly known as Youth Hub Africa. Third, colleagues, we have Mr. Ndeo Naushuku from the Africa Union Agenda 2063, 2019 champion. And fourth, we have Ms. Petraida Paul from Africa Union Commission, Youth Advisory Council. Thank you, colleagues. To give context of our discussion today, we are looking at the youth free trade agreement in light of peace and securities. Let's focus more on to the meaningful participation of youth in FCTFTA. You know, challenges that our colleagues mentioned: employment, e-commerce, entrepreneurship, education, free movement, and youth participation in the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Identify stakeholders and specific roles of state and non-state actors. So we'll be sort of doing a mapping of who are the key stakeholders, and we can carry this forward together. And more than ever, we'll be looking forward to proposing way forward to ensure that, you know, youth do benefit and the challenges, you know, and solutions out of this. So thank you very much. Without further ado, I'll invite my first speaker, Ms. Rowena Emmanuel. Over to you. Please, you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Rowena Emmanuel. I'll be the first speaker on the second session today. I am, as said, the Junior Program Officer at GIZ and support to research and training at the African Union at IPSS. And I'm glad to be one of the youth team that organized today's panel. So I feel very honored. So in this regard, I'd like to appreciate IPSS and GIZ for providing such a vital platform. So my today's discussion point is going to be on youth participation in light of the AFCFTA. So as panelists before me have stated, youth have been facing challenges of extensive poverty, limited access to education, peace and security challenges, migration, sexual violence, violent extremism, and so on. And not to mention these crises are now ever increasing as this pandemic continues to unravel. So as said, the AFCFTA is a comprehensive trade agreement between African Union member states aimed at creating a single continental market for goods and services. So the main goal, as mentioned earlier, is to create a single continental market with free movement of people and investments. So the agreement has the potential to deliver a great deal of economic benefits for countries of the continent. And the hope is that this trade deal will trigger a virtuous cycle of more intra-African trade. This in turn will drive the structural transformation of economies, the transition of low productivity and labor intensive activities to high productivity industrial and service sector activities, which will produce better paying jobs and make a significant dent on poverty. So today's youth are more educated than the generation before them. That doesn't exactly mean this will translate into economic opportunities. So while education plays a vital role, it's simply not enough. So this means focus is needed on the following. Improving the intra-African trade landscape and export structure, creating a sound global economic impact, developing better policy frameworks, boosting industrialization, strengthening regional and interstate cooperation, increasing employment and investment opportunities, as well as technological development, providing the opportunity to harness Africa's population's dividend and the youth vote. But in all of this, of the above, there needs to be youth participation. So to have a meaningful youth participation, which empowers everybody to become leaders and ultimately contribute to the decision-making processes, there has to be meaningful youth participation for this light to unravel. So the current statistics are staggering. For example, a young person in Africa is twice as likely to be unemployed when he or she becomes an adult. This particularly is stressful situation given that 70% of the sub-Saharan Africa population is below the age of 30. The lack of employment opportunities can have devastating consequences for young people's long-term employment prospects, and it can contribute to rising inequalities and social unrest across societies. So there's a mismatch between skills that are provided by most of the youth and the labor market needs. And the free trade aims to create a single market for this that can leverage this potential. So in this aspect, it will become the benefit. So youth have the fundamental right to participate and access information related to decision-making processes that affect their life and well-being. In this regard, we take the 2019 Pre-Tana Youth Forum and the inclusion of the rural youth participation because last year it was held in Kenya and it was not quite pre-Tana, but it was a Post-Tana forum. And we were in touch with our partners with had youth advocates based in rural parts of Kenya. So there would have been good participation, not just by the people by the youth that are in the city, but rural participation as well. So if your voice is heard, programs and policies can be adapted to reflect the actual needs of the young people. So, however, for young people to benefit from the AFCFTA, I think I'm not audible enough. However, for young people to benefit from the AFCFTA, there are three aspects that have to be addressed and improved, in my point of view. That is access to information, access to education, and access to capital. So without these three elements, youth will be inactive in the AFCFTA accession to Africa, and the youth will have just be a dependent population. So similar to other trade blocs, the Continental Free Trade Agreement is likely to encounter some challenges. These challenges are the implementation process is complex and poses significant adjustment costs for member states. It's also difficult to ensure broad-based gains across the board of all member states. And in some countries, there are weak infrastructure, low technological uptake, and conflicts that threaten the successful implementation of the agreement. So finally, even there's like a general fear that the population would lose control of this continental free trade accession to some countries and losing one's identity. These are natural fears, and for these and any youth related hindrance, I have some recommendations. These are simplifying and translating international documents, training at local level to build capacity, encouraging locally made products by the youth, an increase in partnership of the UN agencies and youth-led NGOs. And of course, the government has to play a major role in increasing budgeting and national sensitization. So in light of the few points that I have raised, I think that this is a great opportunity and an ideal time to discuss these matters, taking into account the official inauguration of the AFCFTA headquarters recently. It's time for the youth to put their heads together to discuss the implication of this agreement. The youth have to know what is the challenges, the opportunities, what could they benefit out of this, how can they jump over this, the hindrance that poses as a challenge, and to work with the community to have better economic opportunities in the future. So this is all that I have today. I wish all fruitful deliberations, and thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Rowena, for the valuable contribution. I think my key takeaway here, a couple of points, that youth participation to empower everyone to become a leader is very critical, especially as a solid base for the success of the free trade area, given that 70% of sub-Saharan Africa is under the age, of 30 years. And I think for me also skill mismatch versus labor needs is a very critical aspect of this conversation, to align the three pillars that you talked about in terms of areas of improvement: the information, education, and capital. But having said that, it's really interesting to see that IPSS during the last post-Tana forum, that happened in Kenya, that you were actually able to go and meet people at their own spaces, at the grassroots, the rural people from Kenya in Kenya. And that is very, very powerful. And we are honored as Africa Youth Commission to have been part and parcel of co-organization of that session. So very quickly, I'll introduce my second speaker, Mr. Rochimi Lawale, the ED of the Youth Hub Africa. Brother, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Kate, and thanks to the first speaker for sharing quite a number of gems about the topic that we're speaking on today, on youth and free trade in the light of peace and security, as well as looking at what the challenges and opportunities are. I must say that I'm very passionate about this topic because I've had, in the course of my career, opportunities to travel across the continent and see that the potential that we have on the continent currently remains untapped, and also see the energy and vibrance that young people on the continent continue to show and to demonstrate as an opportunity for us to tap into this demography to continue to increase on what we currently have and to build on it. Africans have always come together. And one of the things that I always say to people was when the founding fathers of the African Union, at the time, the Organization for African Unity, came together to support each other, they had one objective, one clear objective, and that's the complete liberalization of Africa, and to ensure that Africa is taking off the clutches of the colonial masters at the time. And if you recall, at the time, there was no internet, there was no WhatsApp, there was practically very few means of communication. But African leaders came together, they organized themselves, they supported each other to ensure that Africa remains free. And you could see that support even until the 90s, where many African leaders supported organizing in South Africa to ensure that South Africa was able to defeat the apartheid movement in South Africa. The second point I would also like to say is that I grew up with parents who lived a considerable amount of their lives in Ghana while growing up. My parents met and got married in Ghana because their own parents moved to Ghana when they were at a very young age as part of cross-border trade, and they settled in Ghana and grew up. And so my parents, we always joke with them, they would say they are Ghanaians at heart and Nigerians by citizen. And so we grew up eating a lot of Ghana local dishes as part of growing up. So I consider myself also a Pan-African, having grown up in such a household, mixing and intermingling with colleagues and also friends from across the continent. The birth of the Africa Free Trade Agreement offers quite a lot of opportunities and potential. And this is something that we need to currently look at. While researching for this program, I look at current data. 20% of Africa, of trade within the continent, is actually only done within African countries, just 20% of trade. The rest, 80% are trade that is done with external partners. So it shows that Africa is not currently trading with each other. And we need to move that data, we need to move that statistics, and young people are critically positioned to be able to do that and ensure that we see more trade going on within the continent. And we see quite a lot of potentials. The West Africa Belt currently produces the highest number of cocoa in the entire world, and the chocolates and the chocolate drinks that we drink on the continent largely is coming from Europe. It's coming from Switzerland, and so we need to look into how can we unlock more opportunities for young entrepreneurs, for young tech enthusiasts, for young farmers to be able to sell directly, not to Europe, and then we import the produce goods back to the continent, but directly that we are able to sell from one country to the other. I recall a couple of years ago when I visited Tanzania and I heard about Tanzanite. I'm sure some of our colleagues here on this program would have heard about Tanzanite. Tanzanite is a rare gemstone that is unique to Tanzania. And when I began to research on it, it's even a gemstone that is rarer than diamond, but very few people on the continent know about it. These are kinds of opportunities that we want for Africa to be able to sell to each other, and that we can begin to appreciate the values and the potentials and the opportunities that exist on the continent for Africa to be able to share and continue to benefit from one another. I recall that the previous speaker shared about some of the opportunities and some of the things that need to focus on young people in terms of education. I agree solely with her, and capacity building. I agree with that, but I also want to add to some of those opportunities that exist. I think that one of the big secrets on the continent is our opportunity to use our culture, our entertainment, and our music to allow young Africans to learn about each other and to grow that interest in this intra-Africa unity and intra-Africa trade that we're currently promoting. And I see quite a lot of this happening. Many young people now know the music of Sauti Sol, of Boba Boy, and quite a number of artists across the continent, which then shows an opportunity to want to learn about each other's culture, and an opportunity also fueling travel for young people to want to come together and learn from each other. But we can also still see that the barriers still exist for trade to move, for the free movement of persons across the continent. We've seen some progress in the last 10 years. We can see Rwanda was the first to break the ice to say any African who lands in our country will get visa on arrival. It's a visa-free movement. And then we began to see a couple of other countries follow that unique model that Rwanda pioneered by also doing the same thing. My country, Nigeria, last year, just before COVID, also opened up to ensure that any African coming to Nigeria can get visa on arrival. And we need to be able to do more of this and see more of this as we continue to move ahead. And I feel that using movie industry like Nollywood to promote and to showcase how Africans can work together, especially on the issues of trade and free movement, and also using music and our cultural ambassadors on the continent can be something that can be quite useful as a recommendation. The second thing I also want to say is that young people on the continent always say we want to compete with goods coming from out of Africa. We want to intersell, but the truth of the matter is that for us to be able to do that, as Africans, we need to focus on how to better package our products, and this is when we're looking at in terms of training and to benefit from the opportunities around the Africa Free Trade Agreement. It's in the terms of packaging, better customer service, as well as better improving on the quality of product is something that we need to focus on. Again, I belt on the continent where lots of shea butter is produced. The last time I went to Ghana, I see that the packaging for shea butter has increased dramatically. Back in the days, Ghana, come to Nigeria, if you want to buy raw shea butter, they just put it in a small plastic bag for you, and you can buy it in the open market. Now you can buy it in very nice, beautiful bottles that you can display in your bathroom and all of that. But these are the things that are quite important for people to be able to buy African products. We need to improve on the packaging. We need to ensure that all of this is something that can be better improved upon. The third thing I would also like to focus on is that intra-African trade and this whole Africa Free Trade Agreement is not going to work if we don't improve and build upon existing Africa infrastructures. We still don't have open skies on the continent. It's still it's still cheaper for anyone to fly from Abuja to Dubai than to go from Abuja to Lusaka. And so if that is the case, many more people would be interested in going to Dubai for holiday, for shopping, than to go and see what's happening in Nairobi, for instance. And so we need to see still further build on the existing infrastructure and look at the existing agreement on the continent, including open skies, free movement of person, and see how can we have an opportunity to also expand on the rail and road infrastructure on the continent to ensure that we can have the free movement of persons within that continent. Of course, we have some challenges in the West Africa side. We have challenges around Boko Haram, which has become a big challenge, and that's why many times people say that how do we open our borders and we're not? How do we curb the inflow of terrorists within the borders in a way that it does not destabilize the sub-region or the continent? This is also something that we need to constantly watch and see how this is done. One of the things that many analysts have said is that combating Boko Haram or any other terrorist group is not just going to be by arms and ammunition alone. And that's the current strategy of many countries on the continent, where in order to combat terrorist groups or people who have taken up arms against the government is increasing its security budget. But these challenges are not just only in security, it's also social. It's also showing that young people who are uneducated, who do not have jobs, who do not have access to opportunities, are going to be a ready pool to be radicalized to join such groups. And so we also need to see more social investment into quality education, into increasing the quality of education, and also in increasing opportunities for young people to find better jobs for themselves. Government needs to realize that its role of providing jobs that it used to do in the 90s and in the 80s and 90s, where government is the highest employer of labor, is no longer there, no longer exists. African population is growing at a rapid rate. Government cannot provide these jobs for young people anymore. And so government needs to focus on ensuring that it makes it easy for young people to create jobs for themselves and to move across country and across the continent in order to trade, to learn, and to socialize and do all of these things that we have talked about, and this is quite important. Also, we need to, as one of my recommendations, we also need to ensure that within the continent, we create more exchange programs. If you ask young people on the continent, what are the biggest Africa-focused youth programs on the continent? Many people mention the Yale program. I'm always very sad when I see thousands of young people on the continent applying for the Yale program. Yes, it's a good opportunity. I want people to learn, but I feel that Africa can have its own program for its young people. Why should the best of African youth leaders be trained by the American government? This is very sad for me. Why should they go to Europe? Yes, I want them to go and learn, but we should have such opportunities on the continent. We should have the South African government, the Nigerian government, or even the African Union have such opportunities to create a program for young people to exchange between African countries at a massive scale, for youth leaders to know each other, so that in 5-10 years, when these leaders become president, prime ministers, members of parliament, they are able to create Pan-African policies. They're able to come to the African Union and agree because they've been colleagues, they've been friends, they've worked together. And so we need to create more of those programs where we have exchange programs, regional opportunities, exchanges between countries. You also have the IVLP, International Visitors Leadership Program at the US. You have something like that at the EU, but we don't have this amongst African countries. And I think this represents an opportunity. We need to create linkages where young leaders on the continent have an opportunity to meet in forums like this. This is good, but to visit each other's country, to learn about the culture, to learn about the challenges, to see that we have many more things that bring us together than divide us. And I think that I see that my time is running up. And with this viewpoint of mine, I feel that we have opportunities to build on the Africa Free Trade Agreement. I was at the African Union in Addis in February when the election was done. And I was very happy to see that Wankele Mene, who is a young man, emerged as the Secretary General of the Africa Free Trade Agreement Secretariat, which was recently opened in Accra, Ghana. And I hope that he will use this opportunity to also create the space for other young people to have a space to leverage opportunities within this agreement. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Rotimi, for your excellent contributions. It's always wonderful to hear from you. Colleagues, I think my greatest submission from Rotimi's submission has been the aspect of arts, culture, and music, and the role and the power it actually has to connect us all, and how it grounds us together and sticks us together as Africans, and how we can actually leverage on that creative aspect of it to bring down this huge subject onto a language that can be understood and can be grasped by all of us. And I think this was one of the key conversations that happened in session 1, talking about how do we simplify such big frameworks, regional and international frameworks, onto a level that can actually be understood by the local people. So I'll quickly bring about my third speaker, Ms. Ndeu Nakushu from the Africa Union Agenda 2063 Champion 2019, to please make his submission. Thanks, and you have the floor. Is Mr. Ndeu on the call, please? We'll give him a minute, and if he's not here in a minute, I think we'll move to my next speaker. Ms. Paul, just be ready in a few seconds if our third speaker, Mr. Ndeu, is not able to come in. Technical team, are you able to assist? I can't see him. Perhaps you need to request for speaking so that the colleagues at the technical side can support. Mr. Ndeu, can you hear me? In the meantime, as he gets ready, please share the insights we are learning here, the wonderful deliberations with the rest of our colleagues who are not privileged to be here today. Let them follow the conversation. The hashtag is Pre-Tana Youth Forum. Tweet, tweet, tweet. And here he is. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. I am Ndeu Nakushu from Africa Productivity Specialist, as well as an Agenda 2063 champion. Now, the African free trade, it offers such it's a potential game changer. And the whole goal of creating a single economic market is such a big and ambitious goal that we really need to bring our part so that we can make it a success. Now, many speakers have touched on what the continental free trade is all about. So I'm not really going to go that much into details about it. So I will like to start off with rather focus more on the challenges and the opportunities. I'll start off with the challenges. I only have 2 here because I see so many opportunities happening within the free trade space that I rather focus on the opportunities. So the 2 challenges that I think are creating a barrier to the successful implementation of ACTAF is one is self-doubt. Now, this is an area that is not normally pointed out, is not normally not addressed, but the youth must believe in themselves and their role in occupying useful spaces within the continent. It is very important that the youth know their self-worth and they know that they are the future of the continent, and for them to know that they actually have a role to play and that it's all the power is within them in order for them to create the Africa they want, to create the future they want. So, and confidence in yourself is very important, because if one is confident in themselves, they are able to see these opportunities and have the belief that, you know what, I can engage in trade on the continent and have a meaningful contribution. And the second challenge that I see on the continent is there's an information vacuum. Even the first speaker mentioned that there is a big information vacuum, and without information, one is not able to know the opportunities that exist, and therefore the youth is not able to participate in trade if they did not know the information regarding to trade. They do not have access to what opportunities exist within the trade space, which countries, which policies exist. So that's a very big challenge that I think we should work on in just making more information more readily available and accessible as well, so that the youth can really take this information and really use it to plan and to have a larger participation within the trade space. So I will move to the opportunities, and the free trade offers such abundant opportunities. And I have 4 opportunities that I want to touch on that are brought about by the free trade. Number 1 opportunity is the digital economy. The digital economy breaks down borders faster than actual physical trade, because the digital economy enables the youth and anybody who's involved in trade to participate on a larger scale with people from all across the continent at a much faster rate. And this holds a very good potential for youth participation, because the youth are the ones who are very tech savvy. And the youth are the ones who are they're engaging with, the ones with access are engaging with technology on a daily basis. So it's very important that they should be able to take a strategic look at the technology that exists, and for them to use it in order to facilitate trade and to ease the doing trade on the continent. So the digital economy provides a very beautiful opportunity for this to happen. When we look at a technology such as blockchain, I'm not going to go into the technical definition of what blockchain is, but I'm going to mention what blockchain can offer. And what it offers is transparency, accountability, and reduction of cost. Many African generations have been robbed of the true value of their continent because of lack of transparency and accountability in the handling of resources and handling of public spaces by the powers that be. And if we can engage and embed systems in technology such as blockchain that have transparency built in it, we can realize the true value from our resources and our human efforts, and even the reduction of cost. You know, the cost to transact cross-border within sub-Saharan Africa is 4 times more expensive than it is to do cross-border trading within the developed nations. So this is a very unfortunate situation, considering that Africa already has a low income, and when you have trade that is 4 times higher than the developed nations, that is not a good picture for us. So when the digital economy then provides this platform and this opportunity for us to leverage on technology in order for us to reduce the cost and increase transparency and get a bigger value of trade. The second opportunity that I see with the continental free trade is collaboration. You know, I would like to quote, and I'll paraphrase, just a quote that I really find very interesting, is there is no record of any great contribution to civilization without the cooperation of others. So the free trade, by breaking down physical as well as mental barriers across the continent, enables for collaboration to take place on a massive scale, on a mass scale. And if the youth are able to collaborate with fellow youth across the continent, they are able to tap into new markets. You know, they are able to extend their existing ones and tap into new markets find new customers, find new suppliers. So the collaboration, the effort of collaboration and the opportunity for collaboration is enhanced by the African Continental Free Trade. And if the youth can really participate and really collaborate with one another, it will open up amazing spaces and amazing opportunities for them to really leverage of it. The third opportunity is access to Africa. Now, access to Africa is not only a physical one, but the physicality of it is very important, of course, because once we have access to the rest of the continent, we are going to gather knowledge, we're going to be exposed to other cultures, as the previous speakers have mentioned as well. We're going to be exposed to the cultures which we can then understand, we can learn about, we can assimilate, and borrow some features from there and be able to better understand our fellow Africans that we deal with. These are our trade partners. So when we have access to Africa, we are able to better understand our colleagues. So access is very important. And not only does it allow us a glimpse into each other's cultures, it also provides knowledge about the resources that exist in different countries, the minerals. How will I know this Tanzanite in Tanzania if I don't go there? If I don't engage, if I don't collaborate with people from Tanzania, people from Congo, cobalt, where do I need to go if I want to get hold of cobalt? Through collaboration and having access to the different parts of the continent, we are able to know what is it that we have. Why should I go far while the resources are here? So having access to Africa really, I believe it's a great opportunity. And obviously access also with the having physical access to another country, you need to be secure you need to be secure. You need to know, assured of your physical security. And they're going to be motivated to go into this country because there's security, there's peace. And this is where IPSS also, within the framework that we are talking about, international peace and security, those things matter a lot. And when having access to the rest of the continent, we are able to share ideas and solutions. It's a very strange phenomenon that in many countries, they've been built up by immigrants. So people somehow tend to make a bigger impact when they're out of their comfort zone. So, and the typical immigrant story is like, I came to this country with $0 in my pocket and I built an empire from scratch. So when we have access to the rest of the continent, people can move from their country of birth, move into a different country and provide solutions and spread ideas. So that is also one important opportunity when it comes to the African Continental Free Trade, which is access to Africa, to the rest of Africa. Now, the fourth and final one, and which is more closely to me, is productivity improvement. There is a huge opportunity for improving productivity on the continent with the African Continental Free Trade. Because when we look at that, we have to consider, where does trade take place and how does it take place? So where does it take place? It takes place at the borders. Now, Africa is known for having heavily and highly congested border posts, to a point where, going back to the statistics of doing business across borders in Africa, just to import within sub-Saharan Africa, the average time to export is 4.5 days, while the average time to export in a developed country is 12 hours. So the opportunities to improve our productivity that exist within the continental free trade sphere is we can come up with, the youth can come up with technologies, different apps to ease congestion at the borders. We can integrate the different systems of the clearing agents, of the border patrols, or of the customs, integrate them so that there's a smooth flow of information, there's a smooth flow of processes, and enhance efficiency and while we are doing it. So it is very important that it is a very critical opportunity that exists for improving productivity within the whole continental free trade. And those are the four major opportunity points that I think exist within this space. And if I was to give my the way forward, what I would suggest is let us concentrate and invest our efforts in implementation. We have beautiful looking policies, and we have sufficient, maybe not sufficient, but we have a good level of interactions and discussions. But let us focus on implementation. We need to implement, we need to do everything that we need to do to make sure all the policies, everything that we have on paper, everything that we have on screen, we actually do implement it so that the people on the ground are able to then reap the actual benefits of that. So, and I would also just like to use this opportunity to thank Tana, the Tana Forum, and the IPSS for organizing and arranging such platforms. This is where we start. This is where we come and collaborate and work together and form that community and make sure the continent as a whole benefits. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ndeo. I think you've done great justice in and the digital economy that presents ourselves in this era and time of intelligence and smart systems, where digital spaces and innovation and disruption is the way to go. But then I'd like to throw a spanner into the works and perhaps ask what are some of the challenges that comes around digital economy. For example, digital tax is something that is beginning to emerge across the continent, seeing a few countries looking at ways to implement digital tax. And we can also go into digital IDs, but that is a conversation for another time. For now, my job is to welcome the last and fourth speaker, Ms. Petrida Paul from the Africa Union Commission Youth Advisory Council. Please, madam, you have the floor and take it up.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator, to be part of this session. And I think it's such a timely session that we came together as a part of the Pre-Tana Youth Forum to just keep the conversation going on how best to engage youth and free trade in the aspect of the current challenges and opportunities. So my name is Petrida Paul, and I'm an African Union Youth Advisory Council member from the Office of the AU Youth Envoy. What I would say is the fact that currently, despite what's happening, a lot of issues coming in relations to peace and instability, but also challenges also of trade due to COVID-19. But this also is an opportunity for young people. Young people have come up with different creative and innovative ways to actually showcase their talent, but actually be part of driving solutions. We've turned the tables and bubbled up our initiatives to move to online delivery, which is something very remarkable within such a short time frame, especially in Africa, where the peak of COVID-19 started in early March 2020. So we can see that we've managed to find better ways on interacting with each other, moving the ball of the economy to still be sustainable. And as much as I can say is the fact that young people do contribute much to trade, even though it is seen as a small scale venture opportunities, but this in the next couple of years actually do turn up to be the biggest economies that are growing, and despite the different challenges of resource availability that young people face, but this is the platform where we can galvanize different efforts and different initiatives and see how best to actually amplify the FACTA. I think it's an opportunity for young people to be integrated within it, because as far as the AFCTA started, we have seen that we are actually in the process of championing for a continental free trade agreement and movement of goods and services, but still young people are left behind in that whole discussion. So bringing this into the table of discussion is important. I think that's a challenge itself, that if we do not have youth representatives within the tables of trade agreements, continental free trade agreements, is still a challenge. But how do we integrate different efforts of young people within our regions that we are coming from? I think a good opportunity that I would see within the free trade framework is the fact that young people will benefit from a majority of the employments that are going to be available, but also be able to sustain their livelihoods through different engagements that are facilitated by trade relations, and build that cross-cultural diversity, which is very strong at this stage level, especially during COVID-19. We've seen a lot of young people working together from different regional blocs, from SADC, EAC, COMESA, ECOWAS, coming together to deliver as one, especially through the support of the Office of the AU Youth Envoy. I'm talking in an aspect of what we have already done in particular. So I think how best the free trade area will actually bring the young people closer to solve different issues. It's one of the biggest opportunities to embrace cultural diversity, but also I think we still have a challenge of the fact that majority of the young people and the initiatives are neglected. I've seen something not doable, something not viable, something not sustainable. So I think once we have that framework of action on how best to actually support homegrown initiatives and actually amplify their efforts more, we are likely going to have a bigger and better impact across the continent. And I mean, from the Office of the African Union Youth Envoy, we are actually working with different young people, moving the ball of discussion of how best to engage young people in the FCTA, but we really do rely more on the efforts of young people on the ground, on how best they can inform us of different initiatives that are working in the current era of COVID-19, and how best we can adapt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Paul. This was great submission, short and precise, and on to the point. And I think we're doing very well in terms of our time management. We're going to go on to the second session and the second segment of this session, where we're going to open the floor to the general colleagues. And colleagues, I'm encouraging you to post through your question on the Q&A area of the chat box, so that we're able to take the questions to the panelists. I will take the first question coming on from the chat box. And the first question, I think, is from Moses Kanyesiege. Forgive me if I've murdered your name, but how will the African Continental Free Trade Agreement or Free Trade Area happen with the current countless barriers at the borders? Yawa maybe, what are the countries that made up the AFCTA? Christine Odera, how do we ensure implementation while we still have underlying issues and insecurity that might delay implementation? The question goes to Mr. Ndeo. And I'll take one more round of questions. then allow the panelists to respond, and then we'll come to the second set of questions. Is this the right time for the free trade? Are we ready? What can we produce that other fellow African countries don't have? Are we not exporting primary commodities? This is from Moses. The last two questions from Christine Odera. COVID-19 has shown that our government are always looking needy, and that's where the loan request and top-down agenda setting starts. I think that is a contribution, Christine. With our own economic stability, we will be stable to even produce our ammunition and not import guns at the expense of our youthful population. Well, I think this is a great contribution again towards silencing the guns. So thank you, colleagues. Keep on those questions coming. My speakers, kindly pick up a question to answer. Thanks.
Hello. I'll be answering on the first question.
Please move closer to the mic so that the translators and the rest of the colleagues can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Much better. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. So the first question was, how will the AFCFTA happen with current countless barriers at the borders? Of course, moving forward, once the ratifying of this document by member states, efforts and negotiators and negotiating teams will start the discussions to release the tensions around the border barriers. So, but if we can try to access, try to do the accession to the WTO, to already set barriers with little room for negotiation, why can't we do it in our own terms? So, and it will benefit for our local community. And we have to be careful when we access to this big type of commitment. Because sometimes there will be a flood of products. For example, we can take examples that happened for countries that access the WTO as a case studies, like Thailand. There has been a flood of products, especially on the textile, like clothing. So there will be like drop of products which will discourage the local providers. The price will drop because there will be many competitors, and it will be a flood of products. So this will discourage the local youth that are providing these products. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other speaker willing to take up a question? In the meantime, we have a question from Mary Minor. Are efforts to simplify the Africa Continental Free Trade Area limited to organized structure? Mary Minor from Kenya. Then we have Jaleto Gemedi. Youth in Africa are more than 70%, but how many of them are involving in trade? AFCFTA may create job opportunities as an opportunity to youth. However, how can youth become benefited from trade activities? Open mic on the speaker's table, please. Colleagues, am I audible? Am I talking to myself? Can you hear me? Okay, thanks, colleagues, for letting me know that at least you can hear me, and for the great contribution. I feel that 2 or so questions left out. Colleagues at the technical team, kindly support Rotimi and Deu. They're trying to undo their mic, and they seem to be having challenges. Have you tried to hit your release mic button? The aspects of digital technologies so that we hope it works when we want it to work. And sometimes it fails us when it really needs to work. So as colleagues are able to sort out my speakers, I'll talk the issue of backup. That African data should be backed up in Africa because it creates insecurity issue when it doesn't rest in Africa. And as we trade with each other, you're going to leave a lot of personal data. How are we going to secure personal data across boundaries? Because many countries are at different stages as far as data protection is concerned. And this is the new emerging insecurity challenges we are having. Rotimi, are you ready? Leo, are you able to speak now? Colleagues, please feel free to share on your questions here on the chat box. We still have a few minutes left. But also feel free to send out a tweet, share some of the perspectives you've learned today, not only from this session, but from the entire session. The hashtag is Pre-Tana Youth Forum. Pre-Tana Youth Forum. Can tag IPSS, our variable sponsors. Good.
Sorry, Kate, do you have a question from my side?
Sorry.
Not to any particular one that was pointed to you.
All right.
But you're able, yeah, you can pick up any of the questions here. I think one of them is from the letter. Here is Rotimi. Rotimi will go first, and then whichever you are unable to do, then you can take it up. Over to you, Rotimi.
Thank you very much. I was having some technical issues. Let me look at some of the questions that I intend to respond to. So I see a question from Chaleto talking about youth in Africa are more than 70%, but how many of them are involved in trade? FCFTA may create job opportunities as however, can youth benefit from trade activity? I think the essence is not just about trade, but it's also about access to market. If you look at it, in many African countries, the market is small. Nigeria has a population of 200 million. Other countries have smaller population. So imagine if you are based in, let's say in Banjul, in Gambia, for instance, and you sell leather shoes and you produce leather shoes. If without the Africa Free Trade Agreement, you're only limited to population is about roughly less than 2 million. But if you, with the Africa Free Trade Agreement, you have opportunity to export to Nigeria and sell your produce. So your market then automatically increased from 2 million people to, if you had Nigeria's 200 million population, million. So is that access to markets that represent a quantum leap on the continent? And we've seen this for instance, in the EU zone where this access to market already, and also the kinds of opportunities that would happen for young people on the continent when this is when this.
Hello?
Hello, did we lose Rotimi?
It appears that way. It appears that way.
Okay, you might want to take up as he comes back.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to address also the question that was addressed to me about there are already underlying issues at the border posts and within countries. How then can the free trade be implemented, as well as just to merge that with the other question of 70% youth, how can they get involved? So first of all, it takes political will. Having a ratified document alone will not guarantee the success of the continental free trade. It takes political will as well as public will as well. Everybody needs to understand the importance of what needs to be done and the importance of trade, and everybody needs to act accordingly. People need to be able to be welcoming to change mechanisms that are coming into place. And it's also important that there is the necessary skill level, because if we are going to leverage of technology and if we are going to change systems from what they currently are, we need a new set of skills in order to make that possible and in order to make that a success. Now, with the youth, 70% of the youth, how can they best participate? Again, I'll come back to a point I raised earlier. It's about information. The youth need to have, first of all, access to information. And this also, there's a loop, because there needs to be infrastructure as well. Infrastructure needs to be in place so that you can have access to information, because you need towers, you need fiber lines in order for information to be released to you. So in terms of the youth, this information, I believe, is number one, because that is where the decisions are made. And with the current situation, there's really a lot of political will. And one way of changing the political will to make sure that the old guard, the old leadership is just not concentrating on the old way of doing things. The youth need to be more vocal. They need to be more vocal. They need to offer more solutions as well, because it's very important, because when you talk, it's a different situation, but when you actually offer an actual practical solution, and then change can take place. So that is one of the things we can look at. Increase information, flow of information to the youth, as well as have political will to really change the current unfavorable situations at borders, so that we can bring in new skills and bring in new change to improve trade and see the benefits.
Fantastic. Interesting that you talked about political will, because Tijan had a question, and the question, touched on that political will, where they said, I believe the free trade agreement will be meaningless if there's no political will. In West Africa, for example, they have the ECOWAS protocols which are not being implemented due to political differences. And he's asking, what mechanisms should we, as young people, do to ensure implementation of these protocols on the ground? Do you want to take that, Mr. Ndeu or Rowena? In the meantime, I'd also like to find out if Rotimi is able to speak again, and he can join in to finish his submission. Thanks. Over to you, colleagues.
Sense of anybody else, I think I can take this. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, okay, perfect. One important thing that you can do as youth is to come together, because there's strength in numbers. You need to come together and organize yourselves. Know what you stand for, know what you want, and come to the relevant people, the relevant officials who are in the position to make the decision that you want made. But coming together, organizing yourself, moving as a consortium, as one, that is very, very, very powerful. I cannot overemphasize the power in moving as a unit. And it's also very important to remember that yes, Africa is one, but the situation, the social situation, economic situations differ tremendously from country to country. So I'm just hoping in your country or in your region you have more people who are open to hearing civil servants, or rather society's suggestions, and are also actually welcoming to implementing those. But the starting point is to come together and have one voice as a collective. There's power in that. It's easy to say no to one person, but to say no to a collective, that's a bit more tricky. So what I can say is organize yourself, come with different skill sets, and put at the front to say, this is what we are fighting for, this is what we want, this is the data. Always have the data, let the data inform your decisions. Have the data and have a request to do it in an amicable way. That is a suggestion I can give to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mr.
Can I
Ndera.
add on Mr. Ndu's
Of course, by all means.
Okay. The other thing that the youths are supposed to do on
Please move closer to your mic.
Can you hear me now?
Much better. Thank you.
Hello?
Hey, Ravina.
Okay, the other thing that the youth are supposed to do now is raise awareness. By raising awareness, since a lot of people do not know about the AFCFTA, once one has this knowledge, maybe going around and spreading this information would do good to all the population. And the other is simplifying and translating these documents. Since Africa is the hub of a lot of languages, translating these documents and then simplifying it so that the local community and the rural community can understand and advocates for this, and so that it won't be imposed on them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contributions, Rowena. At this particular juncture, I'll check out for the last question. And one we have from Rubiat Mohammed. And her question is to all, what is the next step? What way forward do you propose? And who are the main stakeholders, both state and non-state actors? And what role do they take? And this speaks to the very objective of the discussion today, for us to map some of the stakeholders that can continue to engage going forward after this forum. There's a question from Leti. My question is to all speakers. How will the youth make sure that their participation in the AFCFTA is fully recognized and appreciated? For example, how does a young trader in Zambia make sure that his or her products are of high good value and appreciated in a big market economy such as South Africa, Nigeria, or Egypt? Critical question right there. Colleagues, we take up these two questions, and it's an open mic again to all of you. So we'll do a round of these two questions from all of you. And then should there be no any other question, we will take a minute of closing remark. But first, we take these two questions. In no any particular order, please. Or should I call out so that those who are not in, we can just grab the next? Rowena?
As I was saying, for the questions raised by Rubiat, what are the next steps? So the next steps are, as I said earlier on my presentation, we need the youth to raise awareness, as I said earlier, and training has to commence so that this sensitizing the public can, and then knowing these jargons and knowing about AFCFTA, awareness should be the first priority. And then encouraging locally made products. And then after that, then we would make these negotiations to the big continental free trade agreement so that it will benefit the youth as a whole and the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rowena. Not sure if Rotimi is back on. Rotimi? Okay, Mr. Ndeu?
What is the way forward? My submission will be the current existing youth platforms such as Tana and all other ones, whether they be involved in trade or whatever youth matters on the continent. These different platforms need to work together more often, come together and really amalgamate all their resources and all their networks so that we can start having a lot of projects on the ground, one project at a time, one country at a time, because there are many youth platforms out there that are working in silos. And if we can really come together and collaborate and start with one tangible project at a time, I think that is the good way forward, that the youth can be recognized, the youth's effort and the youth's desires can be brought out into the public so that there's awareness of what is happening in the trade space and the opportunities that exist. So I believe in the way forward is more collaboration, tangible collaboration. It's unfortunate with the whole COVID thing and travel restrictions that we cannot come together physically, but let that not be a total hindrance in itself. But I think the more active collaboration and for Tana Forum and the IPSS to organize more such events for us to get to know one another, because I am gonna get hold of some of my colleagues on this platform and see what we can do going forward. So awareness is very important. Like touching on that second question of how will the youth in Zambia be, how will they ensure that their product is a market in South Africa or Egypt or whatever? Again, that comes back to information and reaching out to other people on the continent and seeing how you can collaborate and getting, instead of you going to Egypt, obviously, if you are collaborating with someone in Egypt, having access to that, you can get the information you want. And so collaboration, just constant collaboration and action. I think that is the way forward.
Fantastic, powerful collaboration. I'll invite Ms. Petrida to respond to any of the questions. Specifically, looking at who are the key actors who we should drop into this, state and non-state actors. Okay, I'll try and wait for a minute. But in my attempt to respond to Rubiat's question, I see state actors, as government, and within them, trade and industrialization, ministries, ministries where ICT is domiciled. I know different governments tackling ICT and infrastructure in various ministries. So ICT and infrastructure and transport where that is domiciled. I think that speaks to what Rotimi had spoken earlier on how do we improve our local infrastructure. Two, I think the REC, the regional economic communities, play a very vital role because they're the pillar of the Continental Free Trade Agreement. I don't think we're able to implement much at the continental level if we don't work with the RECs. So I feel that they're critical stakeholders. Private sector, of course, private sector, key stakeholder, academia. This is an opportunity for us to look at how do we build skills that are, responsive to the needs of current times. Development partners and youth are key stakeholders. We have to, quickly, in a few minutes that we have left, we have two contributions from Al-Azhar. With the opening up of border, there are going to be free movements of goods and people. But my question is, are we Africa ready to face challenges that come with people and goods, like incursion of informal groups, terrorists, the spread of disease, and proliferation of small arms and light weapons? Jaleto, how do we see the effect of instability of one country has effect on AFCFTA? Because I see some insecurity and in some countries due to politics. What are the solutions for such instabilities and insecurities? I think these two questions are joined by the hip, that both of them speak to the risks of free movement of people, speaking to the insecurity and disease, spread of disease, and small arms and light weapons. So we'll make these final submissions at this particular moment so we can catch up on our lost time. I think we're doing very, very well. However, colleagues, this is not the last of the conversation. I am not locking out any further contributions. There's been trailblazing Twitter submissions on the hashtag Pre-Tana Youth Forum. Kindly bring them forward. And all the colleagues who are sitting on the panel today, we are able to interact, we are able to continue to carry on this conversation right there after this. So I'll open up the mic finally for the speaker to take up these two questions, and then we'll close at this particular time. Do we have any volunteer speaker to take up this two questions that speaks to insecurity and spread of disease with free movement of people? Okay. If there's any participant who is like and wants to take up this question, I'll give up the opportunity to you. Kindly request to speak and confine your submissions to these last two questions on the messages that speaks to the insecurity and instability of free movement of people within the AFCFTA. Request to speak, and I'll give you this opportunity to contribute from the floor. Technical colleagues, help me out and find if there's any volunteer from the floor to take up this question and respond to it.
It seems I'm taking up much of the space today.
I was also hoping that you will get a volunteer from the floor and get to hear a new voice.
But I think if anybody is available, I think they might be experiencing technical problems.
Sure, go for it.
Just a short one. There's the principle of benchmarking. there are many peaceful countries out there that have open borders. We can always find out from them, what are your best practices? How do you people have free movement of people, yet you don't have a problem of insurgencies and the like? So I think my submission is, you know what, let's benchmark from other countries. There's no shame in asking advice from someone who did something better. That is the whole premise of benchmarking. So we can always learn from other more peaceful countries and see what measures they put in place to prevent the spread of diseases that can be caused by the constant inter-movement of people. So let's find out from the ones who successfully done it. That's just a small contribution.
Thank you very much. I think that is very, very important, benchmarking and co-learning and sharing, of our lessons. And I think one of the key things we can pick up, just to add on what you've said, is the aspect of creating mechanisms where we can review the implementation on an annual basis, just the same way the UN has the HLPF, the High Level Political Forum, that looks into the review and the implementation and learning of the SDGs across the globe. So I think it will also be great to have an AU-led mechanism that looks into the implementation and review of these great trade agreements. And this will facilitate the peer learning that we are looking for within member states. So, colleagues, I'll request the panel to take a minute and do their closing remark and final submission under 1 minute, and then we can close the session. We've just outrun it by 2 minutes, but I'm sure we can close it to just catch up on time. And again, I'll leave this an open session with no any particular order. I'll invite my able speakers to make their closing remarks. I hope they will not be by yourself now. Rotimi, I hope you're back in now. Thanks, Ben, for all the support. Leo, do you want to go first? Seem to always be the one who's ready.
Mine is very short. With whatever we plan, let us focus on the action part. Let us implement. Implement. That is all.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ravina, I can hear you.
Hello, am I audible? Okay.
Yes, you are.
So yes, in my concluding remark, mine is going to be short as well. So we need to match these skills and according to the labor market, because now youth are being having mismatched or having skills that are populated by other youth, and then they cannot have jobs, so that unemployment will rise. And the other one is the three essential things that have to be improved and are the access to information, access to education, and access to capital. So if these three are attained, the youth and their accession to the AFCFTA will be a smooth and everything will go accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rowena. I'm just checking to see if Rotimi is able to speak now. If not, we'll ask Petrida Paul, if she's on call, to make her concluding remarks. Okay, colleagues, it's been such an honor to carry this session together with you. I'm glad that many of you who we started together this session have been able to stay on with us to the very end of this session. I remain very grateful and privileged to have moderated this session. And to my very able panelists, I think I wouldn't have done a better job than you did in terms of unpacking the topic of this session today. You did great justice to the topic, to the session, and also to just bring youth perspective to the challenges and opportunities on the Continental Free Trade Agreement in the context of young people. And I'm sure that this has been a great learning opportunities. Thank you again for all the tweets you've been able to send. It sure remains a great way to connect the unconnected, the many young people who we speak on behalf and have not had the opportunity to be on this call today. So it's great that we are learning together. And to the organizers, a big shout out to IPSS, who are, the lead in terms of organizing this session. And I must say, they're doing a fantastic job. Thank you for putting this together. And on my own behalf and the behalf of the Africa Youth Commission, who are great partners of the Tana Forum, we remain grateful for the opportunity to co-organize this session with you. Again, to the GIZ for their support, to the Tana Forum Secretariat, the Youth Hub Africa, and all the other, co-organizers who've made this possible. I cannot leave out the technical team and the operators who've been supporting us through these technical difficulties that we have experienced through the session. Again, you guys have been amazing, and we thank you for making this possible. And the translators, again, just to ensure that we are more inclusive and our colleagues speaking different languages are able to follow through with this discussion. I remain very, very humble, and I look forward to the key outcome of the larger session, and looking at what most of our colleagues have said. And I think, to me, three critical things come to mind. One, the last submission from a colleague, implementation, and two, also looking to see that we are having youth leaders here, that we can create an African continental program as proposed by one of our colleagues and speaker, Mr. Rotimi. And the third one, again, is the digital economy and the opportunities that lie within it, and how we can tap in building digital skills as a tool for future trade in Africa. Thank you so much, and I'll pass on the floor back to the program manager, Ms. Rubiet. Thank you, and thank you all. Sorry, Rubiet, we can't hear you. Perhaps you'd want to check your mic.
I'm sure you can hear me now.
Very well, loud and clear.
Yeah, I needed to take the headset off. So thank you very much, dear speakers and moderator. We now have come to the end of the second session. It's time for a health break. It will be for about 15 minutes, and we will meet exactly 3:15, according to our time. So in the meantime, we're going to show a video of Tana. Enjoy the health break and the video, and see you later. Thank you very much.
Pre-Tana is about leadership and citizenship. That's why we launch it with the leadership lecture. And that implied in the leadership lecture is the responsibility of citizenship that enables all of us not only to sacrifice and serve, but to innovate and transform. Tana is about Pan-Africanism and internationalism. It's about our lens. It's about our ideas and consciousness. It's about our narrative, our aspirations, and our solutions.
We are discussing peace and security, and all the work that the Department of Peace Operation and Political and Peace-Building Affairs are doing is related to the peace and security dimension of the global world, but also focusing on Africa, Horn of Africa, and the recent development, which, as everybody agrees, has been like surprising everyone in a good sense.
It is therefore in this context that we are discussing the political dynamics in the Horn of Africa with a view to understanding the emerging trends and provide timely and appropriate responses aimed at promoting peace and stability and creating favorable conditions for unleashing the region's potential for economic growth and prosperity.
The situation in the Horn of Africa has changed out of all recognition. This is a region infused with a new spirit of hope. We are in a truly pivotal period with few precedents in our recent history.
The Horn of Africa region has been cooperating on matters of peace and security, which is a prerequisite for stability and without which economic integration will be hampered.
The political change in Ethiopia was so dynamic that we captured this dynamism in the theme of the conference. And unless this dynamism is guided and nurtured, then we may not be really benefiting the fruits of such dynamism.
Well, for me, what is one of the great things about Tana Forum is that it enables an academic like myself to mix with the practitioners on the ground who are actually conducting these peace operations, and it gives me a chance to both learn from their practical experience, but also for me to discuss the lessons that I think should be learned about this mission. So it's the mix of people that Tana brings here that's really important. NGOs and civil society, academics, and political leaders.
I think the conversation happening here at Tana Forum is at the heart of what the African Union is doing. It's about economic integration. It's about continental security. It's about the free trade area that we have been celebrating. And it's about young people. So we just finished the last panel on migration, and this is an issue that affects young people in Africa. But also the theme of the year of the African Union is refugees, displaced, and returnees. And the face of these refugees are young people. So every single conversation happening here, the questions that are raised here, the recommendations, the outcome of it speaks to what the African Union does.